Well, hi everyone. And this is a live stream that has been long overdue. And we have some news about the Awakening conference, how it went, how we got to hang out with like Jared Taylor and Ramsey Paul and Millennial Woes and all these other cool people. And we have a lot of interesting stories about it. And there's also one case about ourselves that we haven't covered on this channel, even though it happened in February. And it's about my very first hate speech interrogation. So the police in my hometown called me to be interrogated for hate incitement and several cases of libel. So we'll talk about that right after the Awakening conference news. So what sort of thoughts where did you leave the Awakening conference with? How did it go?
It was very excellent. It was on April the 8th, and we had very good speakers there. The event went very well because our organizing crew was very professional, and we didn't really face any leftist trouble because we hadn't publicized the location, but as it was live streamed, they recognized the place, and then they started to whine. But they had guessed the place, and they had whined to the owner, but the owner is based. He says, "Get the fuck out of my face." If
Oh, that they didn't actually guess the place. They had several locations they had been in contact with. They had tried to get a confession out of several location owners, and they had contacted this one several times, but because he never replied to them, they assumed that our conference wouldn't take place in this restaurant.
Yeah, so here's a picture after all the speeches. So there's Greg Johnson, Freddie Meteor, Ruben Caleb, Millennial Woes, Jared Taylor, Ramsey Paul, Nico Saramo, and Roger Devlin. And there's also Tina. It was cool. We had been to Stockholm last year at the Identitarian Ideas. We had been to the Erkenbrand conference in Rotterdam in the Netherlands last October. We had been to the Tallinn conference in February.
And Identitarian Ideas.
Yeah, it was the first that I mentioned. But I must say that this was the coolest because it was the most public, open event, and with the least Antifa or whatever they want to call themselves. So yeah, I'm proud that we managed to do this in Finland, and we'll probably next year do the same thing with maybe some different guys. We'll see, but we must do more of these. Maybe once a year isn't enough, but let's start with this. It's a big thing to get people from all over the world to one location, and yeah, it was. I was just filming there. I mean, I wasn't part of the organizing crew so much. I was just. But yeah, before we started, we had gotten a €5 super chat from Jukka 871 who.
Yeah, he said extremely illegal donation.
Yeah, that message is comes from because well, everybody in YouTube knows that there are super chats, but I think Finland is the only country where others whine about super chats, because they say in Finland we have very tight laws about collecting money. But what they haven't, there's a journalist who is addicted to meth. True story. And she's very angry about the nationalists talking about stuff and making money out of YouTube.
Yeah, so she had seen one nationalist live stream that gathered in 10 minutes something like almost 600 euros, and she got envious and decided to whine to the law enforcement, claiming that these people are breaking donation laws, and she didn't bother to fact check enough to realize that super chat is completely legal, and that's why Google is also doing it in Finland. In Finland, the super chat feature opened a bit later than in US and many other countries. I think it was maybe June. No, maybe July or August.
I can't remember, but you must know that with 600 euros you can almost get an ounce of meth in Finland. So it's, of course, I understand her point of view, but she contacted the police, and the police said, "Yeah, we will check on this topic." But it's a communist country. They whine that all the nationalists are jobless, they are doing nothing. But when we do earn our own money with our content, that's also bad. They are all the time whine. They whined about the Awakening conference also. They said, it starts too late. 3 p.m. it's too late.
And they had problem with everything. Our lineup,
the dress code, it was smart casual or something.
The food,
the food, it was salmon soup. But some guys posted pictures of the soup, and there happened to be carrots, and said, no, that's not a proper soup. You do not put carrots in that. Everything is wrong.
And I think it was a couple of months ago that we first started advertising the conference, and it took a long time for the leftists to realize what was going on. So only a couple of weeks before the conference, they sort of woke up to it, that okay, these people are holding an ethno-nationalist conference.
What is this?
And they tried to figure out the location, and they even resorted to one person from an anti-racist group coming to my Facebook wall and asking me the location.
Like, please tell us where it is.
Please tell us.
We hate you. We don't want your your free speech, but we want to attend the event.
Yeah, and then in the end they resorted to because in Finland the anti-fascist network is called Varisverkosto, and which means the crow network, and on their
like the bird.
Yeah, and on their website they actually posted a request for information that okay, if you know anything about this conference, email us here. So they had no idea, and they were literally fishing for the public to get any information. And in the end, we managed to keep the location secret until the very end. And of course, we knew that the moment the live stream starts, these people will figure out where we are, because we were holding the event in the oldest restaurant in Helsinki. So the location is very recognizable. And of course, that's why we knew to prepare that during the day they would find out the location. But it was the most important for us to get the conference running, get the people indoors before these people realize where we are. And we managed to do that. And they didn't get to vandalize the location beforehand because they didn't know where it was. So there was nothing they could do. By the time they realized where we are, there was nothing for them to do but to whine online about it. They didn't have time to organize any massive protests about us. So the counter protests ended up being like one guy standing with a sign.
I'll show the picture, but I mean, the event lasted from 3 p.m. till about 11, so they had 8 hours, and at around 4 p.m. they realized what the location is, but still they didn't get. They got only one guy, and I believe he's Polish. He's
Yeah,
at the
but
University of Helsinki and so on.
this is Antifa we are talking about. They are most likely so stoned and sniffing glue that it takes 2 hours for them to get off the
But
goddamn couch.
they had 8 hours. Collie 140.
1488.
Collie 1488 put €5 with the message shekels for Jusika Arrow. Yeah, the journalist we were. That's her name.
Well, not exactly, but close enough.
It's almost.
Almost Jusika.
So this is the Wikipedia page of the restaurant we had the event in, and it was established in 1827, and here's a picture from 1862. So you can see that it's a very old place, and nowadays it looks like this. And there's a live tree growing through the roof, which is a nice feature, because they cannot burn the place because they would be damaging nature. So this is, and the font is Gothic, so maybe there have been actual Nazis in that restaurant in the 30s, because Finland had cooperation with them. But still, so there was this Crow network or Raven network or whatever.
Crow.
I don't know where they have gotten this name, but after this report that they made, the mainstream media woke up and they did the same. They copied this article, and they were all whining that this is a very secretive event. The location has not been published. But at the same time, I'd say that we are the only country where this type of event has been noticed in the mainstream media and has been talked about. And if you check the Ekenbrand, I don't think it was in the Dutch newspapers, or it was a tabloid thing. They didn't inform the public about anything, but they talked about it. And anyways, and also there's so there was this guy from his Twitter guy, and I think he's an astrophysicist. Oh, he claims to be an astrophysicist. I don't know if he's an exchange student or what, but he had a sign with the words "Kaisaniemi, tastes of fascism," and you can see the rest. We were inside, behind those windows. He didn't come. He was alone there holding his protest. We offered him coffee because
it was cold, it was late.
Yeah.
But he didn't take any, and people just laughed at his performance. He was standing there with the bike and a sign, and people were taking selfies with him. And
there was also NBC covering the event, and when they left, they got some footage of him and of me. Was ranting at the NBC camera that this retard is proving that we are not violent, because if we were violent Nazis and white supremacists and whatever, he wouldn't dare come by himself, but he was the only.
Yeah, like imagine if one of our guys went to stand with a sign in front of a restaurant filled with Antifa. How would that end up?
Yeah.
Not so non-violently, I think. But we had a super chat message, and Jake 75, €5. Keep Kaisaniemi restaurant free of all kind of meals.
No food for Nazis, or If you come for 8 hours, bring your own sandwiches.
Yeah, and it was funny that when this guy was with this Kaisanin Taste of Fascism sign in there or outside the restaurant, Greg Johnson had asked one of our organizers, "Oh, I hear there's a food critic outside."
Yeah.
And as Junes mentioned, there was an NBC camera crew, and we had a lot of requests from mainstream media to get press credentials. But these guys were the only ones from mainstream media that we gave them to because we don't trust the Finnish mainstream media, at least the reporters who contacted us, because we would have had to tell them the location beforehand, and they are too close-knit with the leftists to give them that sort of information, and we didn't trust that they wouldn't record the audience or that they wouldn't take photos without people's permission. And so we denied all mainstream media journalists who wanted to get in. Associated Press also wanted to get their reporter in there, but we denied them also. But this NBC camera crew was allowed in because it was Jared Taylor who asked us if they could come, because they were making a documentary in which they interview Mr. Taylor and they follow him around. So because they were with him, we allowed those people in. And here Junes is showing the live stream from the event. And today I uploaded Jared Taylor's speech from the event, and it was captured from this live stream on our Finnish channel. And I will be uploading the rest of the speeches in the next few days. And if you want a higher image quality, Red Eyes should be uploading the conference tapes too, because they also had a guy over there, and they didn't live stream the event because of technical difficulties they had with the Skansa Forum in Stockholm the day before. So they simply recorded the event, but that means they should have a very good image and audio quality when they start uploading.
Yeah. Here's the NBC guy filming the protest guy. And yeah, that's about it. He was there.
Yeah, and I was really nervous that things wouldn't go well. Up until the very last moment, I was sure that something would happen, that the location would cancel, that the Antifa would find out where we are going and they would threaten the owner or something, because they do stuff like that. For example, on Independence Day in December, there was a bar in which nationalists held their after party for their Independence Day march, and Antifa burned 3 cars from the owner of that restaurant.
Yeah, we had also a burnt car at the place.
Or attempted burn, more of a...
Yes.
So
it's not a big deal.
Some joggers had spotted that there was a car on fire in the parking lot, and our security used the fire extinguisher to put it out. And the car wasn't badly damaged. There was only some very superficial damage because the fire was spotted early enough. And this is all that they managed to do. So this car belonged to one of our security personnel.
Yeah, it was extinguished in time. It could have blown up, but it didn't happen. There's in the comment section, there are people asking about some infiltrator. There was one.
Oh yes, there was an infiltrator, and
one investigative journalist.
Because when the conference had already started and the location was recognizable from the live stream, one public broadcasting reporter had decided that he would sneak in to our conference. And he apparently managed to use some confusion at the door that there were people going in and out to smoke cigarettes, and he had most likely managed to get in with some of those people, because if the security had spotted him that he hasn't been inside before, they would have asked for his ID, but that apparently didn't happen. So he must have sneaked in with some smokers or something like that, used some confusion. And this guy had such stereotypes about us racists that we, of course, must be drunken and badly behaved. So he pretended to be drunk when he was in the conference. And that didn't really work out for him, because after we realized that there had been a journalist there, it was very easy to track the guy's footsteps throughout the night, because everybody who had been in contact with him remembered the guy who had seemed stone drunk. And everybody else in the conference was relatively sober. Some people had like 1 or 2 beers, but nothing big. So if someone is blind drunk, it really sticks out in a crowd like that. So his own stereotype of racists worked against him on this one. And this guy then wrote this expose, and he basically just said things that he could have found out by just watching our live stream. And I told him, why did you come in there and pay for a ticket when you could have just watched the live stream and get the same information? He, for example, quoted our speakers and analyzed their speeches, and the speeches were live streamed.
No, he asked the opinion of a was it an Alabama professor, something, George Harley or something, but it was complete fake news, his whole thing. He said it was a secretive event, but it was live streamed. He said that they were the only brown hands present were not clapping because they were
To Tarek Taylor.
because they were serving beer. No, there was one brown guy behind the counter working, but also inside there was a brown guy. He claimed the car burn was just a rumor, but it wasn't a rumor. I went and filmed the attempted car burn. So it was complete fake news and bullshit, and they will not correct it, even if we have contacted them and told that your thing is bullshit. But we are not expecting much of the mainstream media. It will be interesting to see how NBC will cover they are doing a documentary on that. I think there will be short excerpts, but nothing big.
Yeah, and you could tell about your sort of run-in with this undercover journalist when you didn't yet know that he was a journalist.
I'm not sure, but after I went outside, I was outside maybe 3 times during the event, and after the last time I was filming the protest guy and NBC, and I came back and I was rolling up the cables and packing stuff, and there's a guy. I'm not sure if it is this guy, but I'm pretty confident that he is this guy, and he just came to my face and said, "Yeah, my taxi driver is a nigger or something." And I said, "Uh-huh." And I continued my thing, but
yeah, and judging by the behavior, it most likely was that guy, because because he was the only one drunk there. Everyone else was pretty sober.
Yeah, and first at the moment I thought, is this the NBC camera guy? But no, So it was probably this undercover journalist. But yeah.
Yeah, and you can imagine how desperate he must have been that the night is almost over and he has no story. Everybody's well behaved, everybody's well dressed. People are having a good time. They are eating, they are drinking, they are listening to the speeches, they are networking. So there's no story there for him to cover. So in the last moment of desperation, when we are already packing up things, the event is over and done with. He then tries to flame some racist commentary from the organizers by starting himself to shout about his taxi driver being a nigger. So
I don't know
that idea just makes me so happy to think how desperate he must have been in that moment. Okay, what can I do to get some racism out of these people?
Yeah, but in a normal country, the guy would just report the stuff normally.
But this isn't a normal country.
Yeah, that's true. Before this, we had a live stream in Finnish, and we were commenting a discussion that they had last week about the European Union, and it was very cancerous.
Yeah, it was pretty terrible. And I don't know, what else can we talk about? The day before the conference, we had a very nice evening when we went to have dinner with Mr. Ramsey Paul. And Ramsey is, of course, familiar to us from a year back when we met him for the first time in Identitarian Ideas in Stockholm. And the Identitarian Ideas is sort of like the Awakening Conference, that it's a nationalist conference that has been held, I think, almost every year.
Yeah, it was the 9th edition last year. So
yeah,
it's almost 10 years now.
So because we had met Paul there, we were able to ask him to come to the conference in Helsinki without it sounding completely random and without having to do a lot of explanation about who we are and what we do. And being the incredibly nice guy that he is, he of course said yes. And he came to Helsinki just because we asked and said, okay, we have a nice conference we are planning. Would you like to come? And we had dinner with him and showed him some places in Helsinki. We unfortunately didn't have much time at the moment or on the next day because we were so busy with the getting from place to place and organizing things ourselves. But it was very nice to get to have dinner with him. And on the day after the conference, we had a sauna evening for the speakers and the organizers and some friends of ours. Oh, and apparently we have Ramsey Paul in the comment section.
Yeah, he's saying that
so he's here.
It was probably the best event I have attended. It was well organized. Yeah, so it's my impression also that it was one of the best of this kind.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot down to Timo and the guys in Sarastus who have been organizing the 612 Independence Day torchlit marches in Finland and other big events with a lot of public coming in. So they have a sort of grasp on how to run a big public event and get everything organized and get people to have a good time. And and we also had a pretty big team doing all of this. So we had us from Monokulttuuri FM or Radio Monokulttuuri, which is our YouTube team, which includes Junes and I, and Tuukka Kuru and Paavo Tajukangas. And then we had the guys from the online magazine Sarastus, which is this traditionalist and nationalist online newspaper. So we had a lot of people doing stuff. So it was relatively easy in the end to organize everything because you have a lot of hands to do stuff. And in the end, the major problem was only to keep everything sort of checked out, that there's one person who is in charge of everything and who knows what has been done and what isn't done yet, who has the sort of checklist for us, for the rest of us. But it all turned out perfectly, and I was very happy that it went so well. But how did you feel about the sauna evening?
Yeah, it was cool. So the conference was on Sunday, and the next day, Monday, we had a sauna evening from 6 till 1 or 2 a.m. And I believe that all the speakers, maybe one or two didn't manage to come there, but they were all present, and so we had some nice food and a Finnish sauna.
Yeah, and the fireplace and everything nice. So you can imagine how wonderful it is. So it was, in contrast to the conference a day before, it was very informal. So in the conference, everybody was in their suits, and I was in my fancy dress and everything. And in the sauna evening, people were basically in jeans and t-shirts, and in a very, it was a very relaxed gathering. And it was pretty interesting because throughout the entire weekend, I had sort of this surreal feeling. But then it sort of peaked when I was putting out some Karelia pies for our guests and helping Mary to get all the cooking done. And then Mr. Taylor comes standing next to me and sees what's on the table and asks me some questions about the food. And then I realized that, okay, Mr. Taylor has no shoes or socks on. He was there barefooted. And for some reason, that sort of made me laugh. It was a surreal moment that, okay, I can see Jared Taylor's toes.
He's Japanese.
And you actually went to sauna with Jared Taylor.
Yeah, it was cool.
So you saw much more.
Yeah.
No homo.
No.
Yeah, and Ramsey Paul had actually tried the Finnish sauna in there too, and he also tried what we call vihta or vasta, which is a bunch of birch branches. Junes can show you photos, and you use these in sauna to clean your skin. So you let the vihta soak in warm water for some time so it becomes soft and pliable, and then you simply start hitting yourself with those, and the leaves really sort of exfoliate your skin. They leave it very nice and soft and give it a nice tone and a good smell. So this is one sauna tradition in Finland that has survived for a long time, and the Finns in there had actually shoved vihta in Ramsey Paul's hand and told him, okay, hit yourself with it. You're supposed to hit yourself. And he had done it. So it shows a sort of good sportsmanship, because a lot of people would have been suspicious that, okay, are these guys pranking me? That maybe at the moment I start hitting myself with this thing, all these people will point at me and laugh. Okay, look what we got the foreigner to do.
So you're on a live stream.
But yeah, it was completely real. So it's a real tradition. Nobody was pranked.
Yeah, it is. And what else could be said? Well, one of our friends showed Jared Taylor. During that evening, they left for about an hour. They went shopping, and he showed some Finnish food in the shops.
Yeah, I spotted my friend Ilkka talking to Mr. Taylor about some food culture. I think they were talking about Icelandic specialties when I last saw them in there. And then at some point I realized that Mr. Taylor is nowhere in sight. And somebody else asks me, okay, where's Jared? And I say, okay, probably Ilkka is up to no good and he's being a bad influence on Jared. And I said that, as a complete joke. And then I start wondering myself, okay, where are they? They are both missing from here. And I ask Junes that, okay, where's Mr. Taylor? And Junes simply goes, oh, he went to buy some herring with Ilkka.
The conversation started with rotten fish, and there's a Swedish food, and Jared Taylor said that, yeah, we have that in Japan also. And there's a BuzzFeed video about they say Americans try surströmming, the smelliest food in the world, and can say that it is very smelly. It doesn't really taste like anything, but it smells. But it's not finished. But from that, they introduced him to other fish, and so they went on a shopping journey, and they were there for almost an hour.
Yeah, and they're asking Ramsey Paul apparently that if I went to sauna with these guys and or something. And actually, most of the women in there didn't go to the sauna. I was pretty tired. I didn't want to take all my makeup removers and things like that, hairbrushes with me when we left. So I decided against it. But I think, didn't Mary come with you?
Yeah, she.
Yeah. So Tuukka's girlfriend was the brave one and went to sauna with Jared Taylor.
Yeah.
And what else is there to be said? Yeah, the food. We were actually talking a lot about the food before the conference, because you'd think that it's a minor sort of trivial thing when it comes to conference planning and planning a sauna evening. But we really had to wonder, okay, what would be something that's Finnish enough to be sort of exotic and something unique, but it shouldn't be something that's too exotic, something that is gross or too weird to foreigners, so that they will actually eat it and enjoy it without it raising too much suspicion in them. And for the conference itself, we got some salmon soup with rye bread and apple pie. Or this, it's not actually apple pie, because it's not like the American pie where there's first the bottom of the pie, then the filling, and then the cover. But it's more like, I don't know what is the word. It's sort of like a pie, but it has no cover on top of it. So it's just the dough and then the apple and bread crumbs or cookie crumbs on top of it. Well, anyway, something like that. And people seem to enjoy it, because the dinner lasted for a lot longer than we'd expected. And we sort of had a schedule slip because of that. But people were having a good time. They were getting their second plates of the food, or third plates even. So why meddle with that? We went in that big of a hurry. And for example, Mr. Devlin was seated right in front of me when we were having the salmon soup, and he was just absolutely delighted about it. Like, he was completely crazy about the salmon soup, so much that it actually made me sort of giggle a bit.
There's also Ramsey.
I have never seen a person so excited about salmon soup.
There's also Ramsey saying that the soup was delicious.
Yeah, it was actually pretty good, because that's a food I like to make at home pretty often. This salmon soup with potatoes and carrots that's made in milk and cream. And it actually was pretty much how people make it at home. So it didn't have this industrial kitchen sense to it. It was pretty much what you'd expect if somebody served you salmon soup at a Finnish home.
Yeah, on our budget, food was the most expensive thing. Without the food, we could have made it the entrance ticket much cheaper. But yeah, 8 hours would have been so maybe some
Yeah,
kind
and
of
if
torture for the people, because I only got the leftovers of the soup because I was at the backstage drinking, checking the video, but yeah, it was good, but I didn't get much of it. There's Greg asking, saying that I missed you. Why were you off air for so long? Yeah, I think the last time we had a live stream was on New Year's Eve. But yeah, we could do much more of these, but we do so many live streams in Finnish that really we should try to make it at least once a week, or
yeah, that would be the good minimum.
at least once a month.
Once a week would be good.
Because
so that would give us time to cover the most important topics without lagging too much behind, and to more if we have an easier week or something. Because one thing that has been keeping us is that we have had so much other things to do with the Tallinn conference, and then this conference we are organizing ourselves.
Yes.
So they have been keeping us pretty busy.
There's Skull Judenfreund, who says that Swan and Junes are cool, but some of the audience are narrow-minded bigots. The funny nickname. There's 75 Ilkka. He's the guy who showed Jared Taylor the
Finnish grocery stores.
Yeah. So he's on every photo. There's been some pictures from the conference and really random photos, and he's always at the back. So we don't know why.
Yeah, and can you imagine Ilkka just coming there and cashing in an insane amount of nationalist brownie points by taking Jared Taylor grocery shopping? But the odds are, if he's going to run into a Jared Taylor fan and try to explain that story, most people won't believe him. They will simply say, "Okay, you were drunk. Go home."
Yeah.
And I don't know, is there anything else about the conference or the things surrounding it? Well, one thing that was pretty funny that I thought was pretty funny is that when the mainstream media started targeting our conference and saying that there's this conference clouded in mystery that preaches white supremacy, they actually gave us a huge rise in ticket sales. We still had some tickets to go, and during the last week, the mainstream media made sure we sold everything, because right after the first mainstream media article showed, we just started getting insane amounts of ticket requests. So we should probably send like a chocolate box and maybe some flowers to Iltalehti for their wonderful work for advancing nationalism in Finland.
And there's a question, what is your relationship with the Kaisaniemi Ravintola? Are they robust against the backlash? Yeah, there's some kind of backlash. We have no relationship. I did not have relationships with that restaurant, but it was sort of the third time that we have, well, the two previous were nothing like this, but every time the leftists have whined, they have sent feedback that I will never come to your restaurant, and they have started. There are politicians in Finland that have started a boycott campaign against it, but the guy says, well, it's none of my business, this thing. I just rent the premises, and that's it.
Yeah, that we are in the business of serving food.
Yeah.
That's it, and we don't decide it based on politics who we serve our food to. So these sort of leftist outrages, they tend to happen after every nationalist event, no matter how moderate the event is. But they always blow over pretty quickly, like the boycott campaign against this restaurant Kaisaniemi, where we held the Awakening conference, that these leftist councilmen and women in Helsinki, decided that they would try to agitate for a boycott campaign against this company that owns the Kaisanemi restaurant. But it didn't really catch on in the first place because people are really lazy to do stuff like that, and most people aren't even customers of this restaurant to begin with, because this isn't your average restaurant where you just walk in and order food. It's I think it's only open for a couple of days during a couple of hours during lunchtime, and most of the time it's only available for those who book the location for a like private event. So it's not like these people go out there to hang out and eat and drink, because that's not how the restaurant is, and it's not going to cost the restaurant anything to have a bunch of these leftists whine about it, because these leftists, as if they even went to restaurants like Kaisanemi, these old-fashioned restaurants. No, they go to the hipster clubs and hipster restaurants and cafes in the central of Helsinki.
Yeah, and well, it's complete nonsense. If a place has accepted some types of events, if you book a restaurant or if you go to, do you really ask who have been your previous customers? In the 1930s, did you have Nazis in the restaurant? Have you had communists? Have you had this? So it's impossible. Will you? If I go to I don't know, anything, a bus company or anything, if they have transported people whom with I disagree, should I boycott it? It makes no sense. But they try it. I don't know. It's already forgotten, this thing. So I don't think it's.
Yeah, as I said, these things usually blow out pretty fast. They just don't have the perseverance to carry these things out. And once the initial outrage is gone, that it stops being news, like the conference, like the Awakening conference stopped being news. Then they start picking new targets.
Yeah, the week after our conference, the next event was a burlesque show in the same place.
Yeah, and they, for example, have had police parties in their Afro dance parties. Yeah. They have had Muslim events. So it really is true what the owner says, that they don't discriminate. They don't ask who are the people coming in. And he said that he would have drawn the line if there was some, say, swastikas or anything in there that would have made the restaurant look bad. But he didn't see anything, and people were very well behaved. So he had no problem with it.
Yeah, just before leaving, I talked with two of the workers there, and said it was full, but there were no fights, no nothing. So it was a cool event even for them.
Yeah, and one of our commenters is saying, alt-right burlesque show could work. And actually, that burlesque show was turned into alt-right by anti-racists in their discussions. So when they found out that this is the location where we had held our conference, they quickly spotted that, okay, there's this burlesque group who are holding their own event in this very same restaurant. So maybe these burlesque people are Nazis too. Of course.
From now on, everyone
who walks into that restaurant is a Nazi from now on.
Even walks by.
Yeah, and then even some other anti-racists started going like, are you serious? Like, how could these people even know that nationalists are holding a conference in there just a week or two before their own conference?
They should know. The first question, have you had Nazis? Yes. Okay.
And the restaurant is 200 years old, so there's a lot of background checking to do. What happened in the 1930s or 1920s?
That must be checked. There's one asking, did you have a disco? Well, not really, but the closest would be that I showed some YouTube videos of so-called hate speech. Because there's one video that I subtitled, which involves a French guy living in Finland that when I subtitled it, I got interrogated for hate speech. And I showed that video to Ramsey Paul and Devlin at least. And it's not a disco, but we didn't have lots of there was no music, I think, just a couple of videos that I showed.
Yeah, but we did have the after party after the conference itself, so that was almost a disco, like it was a nightclub or a bar.
Yeah, but the video, the YouTube videos I showed at the after party, but that was what I meant.
No, what I'm meaning is the right after the conference itself at Ravintola Kaisa.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So,
yeah, that got pretty wild too.
One of our speakers was there.
Yeah, one of our Finnish speakers was pretty rowdy. He was celebrating the conference because he was so happy that we got everything organized and it all went smoothly. And by the time we got to the after party location, he had managed to drink himself into a slightly noticeable state of drunkenness. And I was trying to explain Ruben Kaleb, our Estonian guest, and one American man called John, how happy I was that the conference went so smoothly when this Finnish speaker of ours spotted me from the other side of the bar and screamed out, "White meat!" And then he charged at me and bit me in the arm. And you can imagine the looks on the faces of Ruben and this American guest who have no idea if the speaker and I actually know each other. But of course, he's a friend. And in Finland, we are very well familiar with his antics. So everybody says, Timo is just drunk again. That's always him. Good old Timo again biting women. But I understand that it might look a bit exotic to our foreign guests how these Finnish people like to celebrate. But if you've stayed in Finland for over 2 weeks, you get familiar with these kind of unique traits of our people.
Okay, so...
but maybe we should move into the hate speech investigation.
Yeah, so we already covered the August interrogation where about the subtitled video, but there's new stuff that has come up. We were interrogated in February. So
yeah, and it was interesting that even the police in our hometown are sort of treating us like a couple, because we got letters from the police on the same day. They had the same interrogation dates, and the same police officer was doing the interrogation for both of us. And they were booked right one after each other, so that when one of us comes out, the next one can go in. So it was interesting that the police, even though we are no married couple, they already treat us like a couple. They could have just saved a stamps price and just mailed them in one letter to us.
Yeah. So I was interrogated for what was it? Well, there was one video from the Independence Day thing. There was the president of Finland and the prime minister and some other guys. We were there live streaming the event, and we were reading super chats and stuff like that. And well, we were the comments led to a police investigation, and they had our stream was a few hours, but they had compiled a 12-minute video, and asked, "What do you want to comment on that?" And said, no. And
Yeah, and I was shown the same video because even though there was nothing we both did on the video or both said, all of the police reports were about the both of us. So they ended up interrogating me for pretty interesting stuff. For example, one of these cases was about the former minister, or is she a current minister, Pirkka Mattila?
Maybe.
I think she's a minister now. Maybe she is.
Yeah, but she didn't. She dropped the case, so it's not.
Yeah.
But there's another. You might have heard that in Uganda there was two Finnish guys, one woman and one man. The man was found dead in his hotel room, and the woman was one of these politicians, and she has filed a suit against us.
And I don't even say much about her. It's you who says the terrible things. And even your stuff isn't that bad. Even my own mom was sort of, well, it's Suvi Linden, so what can you do?
Yeah.
Everybody hates this woman around here, so nobody's really that appalled if you say something derogatory about her.
Yeah, and there were other.
So what Junes actually said, I pointed out to him in the party, okay, that's Suvi Linden in there. And Junes said it's pretty difficult to translate from Finnish because it's sort of unique word to Finnish, but it's pretty much like liptard whore into the oven. Or into the oven with the liptard whore.
Yeah. So I don't think that will go to court. If it goes, it's funny, but I don't think it will. And then there was another guy. He's a local politician. He's my colleague. It's this guy, and here he is speaking in our city council.
And you could actually show that clip without the audio, because you don't need the audio to understand how bad this guy's Finnish is. All you need to do is look at the faces of the people around him, because that tells you everything. And this video got Junes into trouble.
Yeah, so you can see him. He's behind me there, and with this, here is one of his party guys, and here's another, and even they are like suffering. At one point, he will make a face palm.
Yeah, they all try to sort of not to listen so that they wouldn't laugh at him, because
here he is.
This African man has lived in Finland for over 30 years, but he still doesn't speak Finnish that's in any way understandable. 30 years, think about it. I could learn 5 languages at least in that time.
Here he's in complete pain here. It's unbearable. He's really suffering. So my crime was to subtitle the video, I believe.
Yeah, and you sort of giggled in the end. I think that was sort of this is a good moment. This sort of
isn't the face palm a bigger offense? I don't know. And they are both from the Green Party, but yeah.
Yeah, and you could show the last few seconds from there too, or the part where you start to laugh right after this guy has finished his speech. So what Junes did was upload this video in which he had subtitled his fellow councilman's speech in Finnish. And in the end, after the other councilman is already done, you can see Junes laughing because he's also reading the live comments to the council live stream at the same time.
Yeah, so I'm under investigation because I subtitled the video. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I was interrogated. I asked the cops So why are you wasting everybody's time here? Because he's a councilman. It's a public speech that the city has recorded. They have their own YouTube channel there. I'm also, of course, live streaming is a thing, but like 90% of that video was taken from the official live stream made by the city. So, and my subtitle was accurate. I didn't make fun of him. I just wrote what he says. It doesn't make any sense, but
it's what he says.
I did it. I didn't try to make him look bad. I just, but yeah. So that was one thing. Then I don't know. You had more stuff, but then there's some people that whine that you have. What is this? Kakkumatu.
The cake migrant lady was among my investigations probably the only one that had any basis to it. That's something that actually most likely would be against the law. So in my hometown, migrants and their these wonderful young women that were their caretakers, self-appointed, of course, were holding a migrant demo, and this photograph was taken. And this woman is with a spoon and everything is a woman called Maarit Mellenius. And I tweeted that photo out with the words. I don't remember
No, but just look at this photo.
Yeah, look at it.
There's a refugee child being fed by. What the fuck is this?
Yeah, I think it said something, the caption like, meanwhile in the migrant camp of Oulu, a leftist whore is feeding cake to her pet. I think that was it. And in that, the whore is something that in Finland most likely is against the law. But we'll see if that goes to court. And yeah, look at that photo.
Just let that sink in.
What would you call her, to be honest, to be completely honest? No PC filter there. And all the rest of my cases, they were complete BS. Like Ramsey Paul must remember us talking about Jimi Karttunen, a man a young man who was a drug addict and a petty criminal. And he had the great idea to go and pick a fight with a Nude Front member. Of course, this Nude Front member kicked him in the chest, and this guy fell on the ground, and then he hit his head on the pavement and was taken to hospital. And because of his drug habit, he refused to stay at the hospital. He kept using drugs while he was in there, and he left the hospital before he was allowed to do so, to do drugs. And then he died. And of course, the leftists painted this story as this innocent, poetic boy, artistic, gentle soul who got beaten up by a vicious neo-Nazi and who was killed by this neo-Nazi, even though the story isn't at all true. And all I did was, before the information about his drug background and petty crimes was actually out there in the mainstream media, I contacted some courts within the Helsinki area, and I asked them, okay, do you have convictions for this guy of this name, Jimi Karttunen? And they replied to me, and I got some convictions for him. And on his own Facebook wall, I found pretty solid evidence that the guy is self-admittedly using drugs and had no problem admitting to it. So I posted this evidence on my blog and said, okay, this guy isn't really what the mainstream media is painting him out to be.
This Jimmy guy was killed on this location.
Paul and I, of course, have this romantic tourist shop there.
Ramsey asked us, where was this guy? Here is his memorial. Oh, let's take a picture. But yeah.
Yeah, and
So-
the end result of the story was that the guy's aunt filed a police report against me. His parents didn't have a problem with it. His sister didn't have a problem with it. But this aunt, for some reason, I think she might be trying to cash in, because if the parents aren't bothered, if the sister isn't bothered, why is she? I can't imagine the aunt being the closest person to this guy.
She's
So-
according to her Facebook activity, she's a retard. But
Yeah, so most likely she's just trying to cash in, filing criminal complaints about everyone who has said the negative facts about Timmy. And there's no basis for charges in there, because libel in Finnish law, it means that you have to spread false information about the person. And there was nothing false about my blog post. It was true, and that's why she got so angry about it. And it became wildly popular. I think it got something like 60,000 views in one day, which for some random nationalist blogger is a huge number.
Yeah, now there's more than maybe 200,000. But
yeah,
so this is the blog post on Tiina's blog. This Tuone Joutsen is Swan of Tuonela in Finnish. And the title is "Why Do We Have to Lie About Jimi Karttunen," which is this fine young man, drug addict, and so. And here she just lists stuff that is accurate. This, and that has been also published by the mainstream media. You must notice that there's nothing that, and we also had a live stream about this when we got the court papers about the act of violence that the Nazi guy had committed upon him, and we based every one of our comments was based on the court papers, and we just commented it because our thing in Finland for us, which we do much more Finnish live streams, we just comment on mainstream media stuff, and we gather the data from reliable sources and we compare it to the mainstream media's narrative, and we just ask, why do they always have to lie about everything? And this was one case, and as you know, every journalist is a retard, leftist retard, that they cannot stick to the truth for some unknown reason. If they want to talk about South Africa, they cannot do it. If they want to talk about anything, they will always get a very twisted report on anything. And this was one case, and when Tiina made this, one of the relatives made a complaint to the police, but it's also we're pretty sure that it will not go to court. And maybe there was one more. There was one a land whale that we encountered at another migrant camp. And she we have this also on a live stream, and during the discussions she asks Tiina, "What would you call me? Was this the case?"
Yeah, and I think it was in Rotuari seaside in Oulu, and we spotted this very heavy-set woman among the migrant demonstration in there. And we, of course, because we are helpful people, we went to see if she needs help in getting back to her friends and relatives in the ocean. And then I get into a heated debate about immigration with one of the migrants. And then when I think we were talking about who is Finnish, who has the right to be in Finland, something like that. When this woman steps in and says, "Okay, what am I then?" And I said, "You're a traitor and a useful idiot." So she came to ask the question from me. I simply answered it honestly. I didn't shout at her. I simply stated it. And then she went and filed a police report against me for my honest answer.
You're a useful idiot. Okay. In Finland, they whine about everything. At the same time, they can call us Nazis, racists, whatever.
Yeah, whatever they like.
If we complain to the police doesn't investigate. But if I say anything, if I fucking subtitle an accurate version of one guy's speech, it's a crime for them. So it's double standards. Everybody knows this. There's nothing new. But then there was the sign issue. Because
yeah, it was sort of the biggest one.
We had been. It's 1 year now. Before May, the last days of April last year, there was a demonstration organized by some leftist retards that was called Dance for Humanity, and it was an answer to terrorist attacks or bomb attacks in Kabul and Baghdad. It was a normal day in Baghdad and Kabul, and there were bombs that blew up. And so because of those deaths, they thought that it would help to dance here, and so it was a march where they danced and so on. And in the Facebook event, they said, "Bring your own signs," and so we made up some signs. We were late, very late. We were up very late, and we made some signs. And then we went there, but it was also a crime. So my sign was saying that there were
like several phrases on Junes's sign on two sides of it, so he flipped it at some point. But what the police report was filed about was the learn how to swim.
Yeah, my sign said also #pray for insert city here. The city of Malmö is almost as dangerous as Baghdad, or the other way around. I cannot remember. And this one, learn how to swim, and I was interrogated for it in August for 3 days. They held me in jail for 3 days, and well, I confessed. I said, yes, this is incitement, racial hatred. Learn how to swim. At the end, I hope this goes to jail, to court. But the real story behind the slogan is a social democrat from Finland that had addressed the racists and Islamophobes and had said to them, stop complaining about the tidal wave of Islam and learn how to swim. So this was, and this learn how to swim has become a joke, that if someone complains about anything, like, yeah, in Sweden there's no-go zones, you go out, you get raped, my whole neighborhood is like the Middle East, it's there's Sharia law, just any or I don't know, a migrant has a sexual emergency and rapes a 10-year-old, just my answer, learn how to swim. Just like really dark humor. But humor is a crime in Finland. So I was interrogated for this, but also I was in August, I was interrogated for a sign that she was carrying, and that sign said, "A Scania attack lasts only for a moment, but the scars of racism last forever." And that's also a. But they interrogated me for a sign that she was carrying, and I said, "Yeah, it's like a rape. A rape lasts only for a second, or a short time, maybe not a second, but a short time. But the scars of racism, they are forever." But and yeah, they asked me, are you racist against the Muslims or no, the victims in the Stockholm attack? The fucking Stockholm attack, it wasn't a Scania. The Scania thing was in Berlin. But she was interrogated now in February for the same sign, which I wasn't carrying, but she was. And well, your victims were another group.
Yeah, so when Junes was interrogated for this sign that a truck only hit you for a moment, but the scars of racism are forever, they told him that it means the migrants who have drowned at the Mediterranean. But when I was investigated for the same sign, they told me that it is demeaning towards the victims of the Stockholm terrorist attack.
Okay, but
so the victims even changed. When Junes held the sign, the victims were different from what they used.
But the Scania truck was in Berlin, as you can see from this picture. The Stockholm thing, it was a Mercedes. It was a completely different thing. Drottnings. So what is this? Well, it's complete nonsense. But we both admitted to committing a hate crime. So I don't know if we'll have a joint court hearing. Your victims were Muslims and my victims were
just any migrants. And we had a funny moment in there in the interrogation because I know there was one deadly gotcha question I could ask the police officers, which is about my sign that, okay, yeah, I carried the sign that says a truck only hits you for a moment, but the scars of racism are forever. But who exactly does that incite hatred against? And then the cop sort of started answering. Then he was taken aback. He realized, okay, I need to get this answer right because this might sound bad. And then he said, I guess it's Muslims or immigrants. And I said, you guess? Based on what? And then he simply fell silent because if he said that, okay, of course you're talking about Muslims because you are referring to Scania attacks, he would do that same stereotyping himself. So to say that I have incited hate against Muslims, they have to admit that they believe in that stereotype too, and that they are basing my charges on it.
But what do the Stockholm guys have to do with a Scania? Because they were run over with this truck that is a Mercedes. But yeah, they're considering us criminals for a
and not
sign.
just any criminals, because the incitement of hatred against the minority in the Finnish penal code, it can be found under war crimes and crimes against humanity. So we are war criminals, actually, or suspected war criminals at least.
Really, thug life. We didn't choose thug life.
But it's getting very late.
It's midnight.
Yeah, and I've been up from since very early and I still need to do some stuff. So how about we call it quits for tonight and continue some other night?
Yeah,
when we have some more topics to cover.
Yeah, we'll try to make more. There's So What too.
Yeah, hi
From
there. So
the German guy that we must have on a hangout someday.
yeah, definitely.
So yeah, we'll try to make more regularly these English live streams. But yeah,
Yeah, and I'll be uploading the Awakening Conference speeches in the few days.
yeah, and also Red Eyes will be publishing their own footage that is higher quality.
Yeah,
And yeah, also NBC will have some stuff. We don't know yet what they have, but
something is coming up there too.
yeah. So what is the up and down ratio? There's one downvote and 77 upvotes. That's an inside joke from Finland that because I don't know, it's too hard to explain, but the thumbs up down, it's our opponents are saying that yeah, nobody likes, but there's also always a 95% ratio of likes to dislikes. So so thanks for yeah. So what said? One Muslim voted you down. Yeah, we have. This is also a group that varies, because if we are talking about a certain subject, then the civic nationalists are voting down, or the mainstream journalists are voting down. It changes a lot. Okay, so see you next time. We'll try to do more of these English live streams. So see you.
Yeah, see you. Bye.